My name is Penry Price. I lead the marketing solutions business at LinkedIn. And on behalf of LinkedIn, I want to welcome everybody today. It's a stunning venue, actually. Pretty amazing way to start our fun-filled day in Cannes. And we're going to get right to the agenda. We've got about an hour and a half of content. And with only an hour and a half of content, you get to the content as quickly as possible. So a couple things just to sort of set from a ground rule perspective. Really what we're trying to talk about in this hour and a half is the sort of convergence that we're all sort of experiencing from a marketing aspect, from a company aspect, and how do we as marketers and brands think about driving business impact and business growth. And so we're going to have a few dialogues around culture, around talent, and around sort of really business impact centered around sort of the circles behind me. And sort of to get us focused. And then at the end, we're going to actually run through a little bit of at our tables, a little bit of a workshop with each other to discuss what we've learned. The agenda for the morning, if I sort of slide through, also I should say, as many of you may know, that LinkedIn, sort of our own value proposition, sort of why we care about customer growth, why we think about business impact. The value proposition we offer to our members is really centered around, helping them make their lives more productive and successful in their professional worlds. From a company standpoint, we obviously have a few different value propositions, really around centering hiring, marketing, and selling. Market to those who matter, something that we really have sort of embarked on to make sure we deliver for you as clients and for our partners. From a talent perspective, attracting, retaining, and developing talent, and lastly, sort of the concept that is around social selling. So trying to move through these quickly to stay on time. There was an announcement this week. We're not going to get into it today. We've got many months of regulatory process. This was a slide that maybe some of you saw that was put out in the investor deck, and some of the press talked about just this matching of what Microsoft is been building around the professional cloud and what LinkedIn has been building around professional network and the interesting marriage that brings forth. So again, nothing really to address here today. The remarks we just touched on, we're going to get into a discussion with Mark and Keith Weed in a second. Sir Martin is on his way. Getting into the culture discussion, as we mentioned. We've been working with Millward Brown Vermeer on a Insights 2020 work that we're going to share some interesting details around business growth and impact related to a company's sense of purpose. And then we'll do, as I said, a quick working session, and then we're off to the madness that is the Croisette after that. So without further ado, I'll bring up Mark, and we'll get started with the first discussion.
Thank you, baby. And Keith Weed, thank you very much. Good morning. Are we going to stand or should we sit? Feels, how are you more comfortable?
Whatever you want to do.
Let's sit.
You're the boss.
So, when I sold my company to WPP 2 years ago, I quickly learned to stop apologizing for my ultimate boss being late. He's a busy man, and hopefully Martin will join us in a few minutes.
He'll walk through the back and do a grand entrance. If you just open up the crowd.
And all start clapping. Let's all start clapping. No, but Keith, it's actually really exciting. As I was walking up the stairway to come here, I just couldn't help but notice the number of posters about purpose. And I really think that that's something that you can take a lot of credit for, because you were the first, if not one of the first, and definitely the first large company to start shaping that to actually lead the industry. It's a topic which now is permeating through every aspect of marketing. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit now that you've been you're sort of 5 years down the line, if not more. When you look at talent, and when you look at the fact that now your employees are just as much brand ambassadors, not just the marketers, but everything, everybody in a large company like Unilever, can you talk a little bit about the journey of how you've gone from defining brand purpose to actually having everybody that matters, everybody that has touch points, understand and live that within Unilever?
Yes, I mean, coming back, first of all, good morning, everyone. Coming back and the thought about purpose. I think we call it purpose now. I think there have been lots of businesses have been working in this area over many years. In fact, if I go back to the late 1800s when our business was started, Lord Leverhulme came up with a line that he wanted to make cleanliness commonplace. And that was without any help of McKinsey or a management consultant. He saw a very dirty England, the slums of London were every bit as bad as the slums we see now in Mumbai or the favelas in Brazil. And he thought that he could make a business that would do good by selling soap to the masses as such. And he launched Sunlight Soap. And that was sort of the origins of Unilever. So I think it's been bubbling along. I think what happened, though, and the reason why we talk about it so much now, is I think in the 80s and the 90s, I think marketing lost its way. I think got caught up in selling more stuff. And if you actually think about what marketing is based on, the marketing is identifying what you need or what you aspire to, and me serving your needs better than the alternative or better than the competition. If I do that, then my market share grows. If I fail, my competitor's market share grows. And I think that getting back to saying, what are the role of brands, not just in delivering functional benefits like Persil washes whiter, which indeed it does, but what can brands like Persil do more? So for Persil, we have a campaign around Dirt is Good, and it's around child development, and it's based on saying, actually, kids should get out and play more and get dirty and learn about life, and don't worry, mum or dad, Persil will get your clothes clean. But that thought about children playing outside more is a very resonating thought, because right now, as you know, and a lot of you will have kids, they spend their whole time on the mobile phone and in front of the computer. So I think brands engaging with society and engaging with social problems and environmental problems is a key thing. And I think within that, it then takes you through to your employees. So if we tell our employees that all you're doing there is to shift more pallets of soap, is one thing. But if you say that actually the best chance for children to live to the age of 5, that's the critical moment, is 5. If they live to the age of 5, especially around the developing world, is good hygiene. And if people wash their hands, they will be ill less, they'll be able to go to school more, and if they go to school more, they'll have a better education. If they go to work more because they're not ill, they'll have a better income, and hence the role of washing hands. And we've taught over the last 5 years 440 million people how to wash their hands properly. Now, we're the largest soap company in the world, so there might be some benefit to teach people how to wash their hands. But I think if you tie it up and say, what is the role of your product in the broader society, I think that's good for society, but it's also good for your employees. If you look at our engagement rates inside Unilever, they're up in the 80s. There aren't many companies that have that level of engagement.
I want to do one follow-up question, but first, good morning, Sir Martin. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask Keith one follow-up question, because you mentioned two things which I think are actually really important for the people in the room. One, you said you went all the way back to the founding days, and I think it's probably true to say, I don't know of an example of a company that was set up to make money. It's always a founder that sets up a company to make a difference, and because they do so well, they make money. But now, you're marketing, you're not the CEO, and in fact, Paul Polman has taken a very high profile. That's not the case everywhere. Can you talk a little bit about the partnership between the CEO, and if it's a company purpose, then surely the CEO must lead, and marketing, who's playing that role and actually translating it to actual brands? How does that partnership work, and how does it work for you?
Well, let's start with, he was the person who gave me my job, so that's one thing I should say. Secondly, he constructed my job, which I think is interesting, because I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Unilever, and we're the second largest advertiser in the world, and in itself that could be a day job. But he also gave me social and environmental sustainability to run as well. So within that, everything we do around our sustainability plans and strategy. Then he also gave me communications, internal and external communications, external affairs, and our foundation. And what that enables me to do, and I think more companies are getting onto this, is join together all the messaging. I think the old days of having corporate communications over here and marketing over there are gone. I think that was fine before the internet. Because companies could talk out of one side of their mouth over here and talk to consumers differently over there. But of course, all of us know that we can engage and find out who's behind the brand, who's the company behind the brands that we're buying. So I think consistency of message is more and more important. And in that, I think connecting marketing and comms together is important. I think then, if you put sustainability in there as well, I think you create something which enables a company to really drive its purpose. Because if you have marketing in one corner selling more stuff, The sustainability guy, a guy with a beard and open-toe sandals trying to save the world over here, running sustainability. And then the comms department over here trying to get a great picture for the annual plan about a project you've done in Africa or whatever. I think that is fundamentally the wrong approach to really embed sustainability at scale. So I'm not interested in CSR. In fact, I closed the CSR department. One of the first things I did, corporate social responsibility. Because the idea about corporate social responsibility is sort of, I do good over here to negate the bad I do there. So our principle, and it's been very much led by Paul, is why don't we just stop doing the bad stuff? Why don't we try and create a business model that has social and environmental sustainability at its core? So all our brands are striving to get their purpose sorted out. So with Dove, campaigning for real beauty and self-esteem, making people more aware of the impact of the beauty industry on young girls and how they feel about their bodies, or whether it be Ben & Jerry's, campaigning on one side for climate change or for gay marriage, etc. I think all those are examples of things that work if you join it up. And of course, Paul himself is a great ambassador for that.
Well, so you gave me a great place to leapfrog to Sir Martin, because you mentioned consistency across all the things you do. Now, Sir Martin, you run the biggest network of basically partners to marketers, and that means consistency
junior partners.
Junior partners.
Not domestic servants, but junior partners.
But I know that horizontality is something you've talked a lot about. I think marketers more and more are seeing that they have to work with more agencies, but they're also trying to drive this consistency. And somebody literally yesterday still said to me, a CMO, if only they would make it easy for me. Can you talk a little bit about how you're driving that across the network?
Okay, can I depart from the agenda?
What a surprise.
Okay. So
it says here, Sir Martin will not answer your question.
And just take a couple of minutes and let me come back. And Keith has sort of, in his normal erudite way, has put the case much more cogently than I could. Anyways, but and I've been in the Cannes bubble now since Sunday evening, and it's increasingly striking me as a bubble. Why is it a bubble? Because I think we're sort of increasingly away from the realities. What's the reality? The reality is that the world's growing at a pretty slow pace. And in fact, when people say, what's Cannes like this year versus last year, it's probably tightened. I mean, forget about Brexit, forget about Donald Trump, forget about all the other things, China and Brazil and Russia and goodness knows what. Life is getting, more and more difficult, and our clients are under increasing pressure. Why? Well, top line growth. We're looking at top line growth, and forget about all the nonsense about revenues. Let's look about net sales, which we seem to be reluctant as an industry to talk about, but we're the only one who does it. But it's growth of around 3.5%, which is a roughly GDP level, which is logical, because advertising as a proportion of GDP remains the same. Very little inflation, therefore clients like Unilever and others have very little pricing power. What's the result? Focus on cost. You look at, so that's the basic background. You look at the average life of a CEO, life expectancy as CEO. CMOs, Keith, how long have you been CMO for?
6 years.
Right, which is about twice, 3 times the life expectancy of a CMO. So he's raising the average.
How long have you been CEO, Martin?
Too long. Too long.
So you're raising the average as well?
So we're raising the average as well. So goodness knows, if you took the two of us out, it'd be much, much lower. And then if you look at, to come to the heart of Mark's question, you look at if we're running a legacy business, which Unilever is, WPP is, and most of the people in this room are. Most of them are disruptors like LinkedIn. Disruptors, build your business and then be absorbed. Chance would be a fine thing. So what do you got? You've got at one end of the spectrum disruptors like Airbnb and Uber. At the other end, zero-based cost budgeters who put tremendous pressure on legacy models. In the middle, you've got activist investors. And let me just give you sort of 2 sets of facts, which I think if there were 2 slides that I could stick up on a board, they would be the following. The first is the S&P 500, comparing them this year to 2009. In 2009, you think about it as one company. The S&P 500 in 2009 distributed about 50 to 60%, or returned 50 to 60% of its retained earnings in dividends and buybacks. In 2015, it distributed more than 100%. Right? In fact, in Q4 of 2015, it was 122%. I don't know what the Q1 number of 2016 is. What is that telling you? It's telling you that managements don't know what to do with the money they make. They're putting it back to the shareholders. The other slide would be, Eric is here, and representing Kantar and Brand-Z and Millward Brown and Vermeer and everybody else contributes to our Brand-Z study that we do, Brand-Z study that we do with the Financial Times. And if I showed you the graph, if we all invested in a fund that invested in the top 10 brands in our brand valuation study for the last 10 years, we'd outperform the MSCI by 300%. We'd outperform the S&P 500 by 67%, 68%. What does that tell you? Companies that innovate and invest in brands win. And that's the bubble. Because the reality, as everybody in this room knows, that when we leave Cannes on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, we go back to companies where, and I'm an ex-CFO, so I shouldn't be saying this, where the finance function and the procurement function rule. And let me just tell you what happened just recently. And if I sound passionate about it or sounding off about it, I really think it's absolutely fundamental. In a media auction that took place recently, a reverse bid media auction. So procurement leads the process, and they're buying media like sugar, like a commodity. Reverse bid auction. The agencies, we refused to participate in the auction. The agencies were responding to a bid which said, without knowing what the pricing was, so you don't know what the elements of the pricing were, you were asked in the reverse bid auction to say what you would reduce the current pricing by. So you bid 20% down, let's say. And if you wanted to carry on, you'd have to bid more than 20% down. It's insane. And the agency commits to doing it. And then it has to go to the media to say, look, I committed to the client to do it. What are you going to do for on pricing? To which the media owner will say, obviously, no, that's your own thing. This is the world, and that's why I refer to it as a bubble.
So can I pick up on that, Sir Martin?
No, okay, I'll come back to the question. No, so how do we do it?
You are my witness.
The answer is, very simply, you do what we've done with Ford, you do what we've done with Colgate. And it's not the sort of BS that you read about in Campaign or Ad Age, where somebody says, I'm going to provide a client with a seamless solution. Or, somebody starts an agency, there are two people in the agency, and they say, we're going to be seamless. Well, of course you can be seamless, you have two people in an agency. You have 194,000 people in 112 countries, it's a little bit more difficult. But what you do is you create, it's a very simple solution, actually, at the end of the day, an agency within the agency, within the group. And Ford, let me just give you the detail. So, 6 years ago, in Detroit, we took a building from Ford Land, which made it even more palatable. Took 6 agencies, 1,200 people, put them into one building, one P&L. George Rogers at that time was running Team Ford, or Team Detroit as we called it. Reduced the 1,200 to 1,000. It's now back up, I think, to about 1,400 or even 1,500 people. And we're rolling that model around the world. It's now called GTB. Colgate, smaller scale, exactly the same thing. What it takes, to the heart of your question, is not the agency to do it, it's the client to do it. The CEO has to be the brand guardian. The CEO has to have a vision, has to have an able CMO, and he or she has to be committed to that vision and implement it, and have to integrate it. And there has to be direction from the center. And there has to be an acceptance by the client that the integration function is done by the agency. I don't think clients, and obviously I'm biased, right? I don't think clients should take on the integration function. I think that is something that we should do for them. We have 194,000 people in 112 countries. I think they're better than averagely intelligent. let's say they're averagely intelligent. They will get the job done better. And with that pressure that I referred to inside the clients, the zero-based cost budgeters pressure, we can execute it better.
So I want to pick up two themes, because in a way you're talking about customer centricity from a network perspective and saying, look, we're able to integrate these things. You were both on the advisory board of Insights 2020, which was all about driving customer centricity into the company. And you also talked about the capabilities required, and you talked about the lack of ideas. If people are giving back money to the market, it means basically that, and you're getting the pricing discussions that you're describing, you get to pricing when there's commoditization, or at least perceived commoditization. I want to twist it now back to the Unilever perspective. Insights 2020, Keith, you, I know, penned an article, as you did, about Marketing 2020 with me, for Insights 2020, and it's being published in HBR in September. I'd like to, it'd be fantastic if you could talk a little bit about how you have driven that customer centricity at a customer, consumer level, human level within the organization first. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it comes back to, we're a branded goods business. Every day, 2 billion people use our products. That's nearly a third of the planet. When you come back to, if you're going to serve those people better, you better know what they want and what they aspire to, etc. And we're one of the largest commissioners of market research, actually mainly with you, Martin, as you know. Large commission of market. Exactly, yes. It's never enough for Martin. And what we've tried to do across the business is get everyone really clear that it is all about the consumer. And so our marketing strategy has 3 pillars. The first pillar is put people first. You can't say it clearer than that. Put people first. And we've found different techniques to engage people. But I don't think you can beat just getting involved face to face. Now you need quantitative market research, and you need ways to scale that. But I can remember when I ran our home care division, laundry, household care, etc., the job I did before this one. What struck me when I first arrived there were lots of men who maybe were slightly embarrassed they were running laundry and had created it into this big business, and they talked about the P&L the whole time. In fact, a little bit like what Martin was saying there. And actually, I said, well, no, the first thing we're going to do every meeting is we're going to wash clothes. And so when we arrived in India, we would start, and everyone, by the way, in the world hand washes. There's a few 100 million like people in this room who have machines, but the billions of the people in the world hand wash. So they know so much better the quality of your washing powder because their hands are in it every single day washing clothes. So one of the first things we did was literally go and wash clothes. And if you've been in a sort of a slum in Mumbai, as I was mentioning before, and washing some woman's husband's underwear in front of her. She's never seen a man wash before anyway, but seeing that, she's like, oh my God, what's this strange foreigner doing? But I think that sort of thing, right up close, and then using other techniques, or the quantum techniques, etc., to scale it, and really make it clear that what we need to do is understand how our products work, understand what people want. It sounds very simple, but trying to do that with 6,000 marketers is quite a hard work.
And so, across these silos, both of you have silos in your organization, and both of you are huge employers, and purpose helps people, helps win people. The war for talent is very, very real. If you look at the companies that are here now...
Well, what's interesting is...
Let me just finish the question, please.
No, I'm not going to let you finish the question. No, comment, no, sir, because just on the silos for a minute, the top of the silos want to maintain the silos. But to your point, the deeper you go, there's a sort of a law of what we call it horizontality. We're trying to get people to think about invert the pyramid or change the nature of the pyramid. One of the laws is that good people are less cooperative than average or bad people, which is a very dangerous thing because if you're talking to average or bad people, they think that to be good, they have to be uncooperative, which defeats the whole purpose of the exercise in the first place. But at the end of the day, that's one thing. The second thing is the deeper you go in the organization, the more cooperation you go. The deeper you go, the less people see the value of silos, the more people want to cooperate. In our business, if they're in the advertising part of the business, the media part of the business, the PR part of the business, they want to work with people in other disciplines to understand the whole communications mix. So what it is about sort of delayering and networking more effectively to create that horizontal organization where people are naturally cooperative. And the trend, as you know, Mark, inside organizations is for them to be more global, but also to be more local, and for the regional increasingly to be taken out.
To be cut out completely. Now, so we do a lot of marketing, what we call pulse checks, marketing 2020 pulse checks. Half the purpose of those exercises is to show the regional heads, if they still exist, or the global, or for example, the head of North America and the head of global, to show them the numbers of their own people that are saying, why the heck aren't we cooperating? I know that another market, I remember at Diageo, we were working with Smirnoff, they're entering China, and they're saying, we've done this before. We've taught people how to drink vodka before, but we can't find how to do this. It is the senior people, but that's what I was going to in terms of a question. And let me then go to Keith and ask the equivalent. As you have these silos and you have these regions and you have very smart people at the tops of businesses, let's really talk about how to motivate senior people to collaborate, to drive that to enable that customer centricity and to enable that consistency that you talked about. Literally, as a sort of a personal leadership journey, how have you brought people along?
Well, I'm not actually so fixated on the thought about silos, and maybe I mean, I understand there are different parts of the business, but maybe we're a little bit luckier in Unilever, because, and maybe you're right, maybe it is the purpose, I don't know. We made a commitment when we launched the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan back in 2010. One of them was to source all our agricultural raw materials sustainably by 2020. So it's a 10-year plan. We're the largest tea company in the world, we're the largest ice cream company in the world. We buy a lot of agricultural raw materials. It was an objective put out by myself as part of our sustainability strategy. I could not have got to where we got to now. So at that stage, we had about 7 or 8% of our global raw materials sourced sustainably. 5 years into a 10-year plan, we're now at 60%. So we source 60% of our agricultural raw materials sustainably. I could have never achieved that if it wasn't for an enlightened chief supply chain officer who's basically done the work. So I see the cooperation, but I definitely agree with what Martin, though. I see cooperation in a different way. I think what technology has done is made the world more global, absolutely clear. Technology doesn't see boundaries. These funny countries that were set up by kings and queens in Europe back in the 1500s. Technology doesn't
Which
see
we're
that.
going to go back to on Friday.
Yeah. We're not talking about Brexit. Yeah. But what we saw, I think, very clearly in the last 5 years is a real shift to globalization because you could. What we're also seeing is a real shift towards local. So I think the world is going global and local. If you think about social media, at the end of the day, it's in the language, in real time, in the culture. There is no way someone in a sort of a global headquarters can have a successful social media program being driven on the back of, I don't know, Brexit jokes in the UK or something that's going on in Indonesia. And so I think what we'll see more and more is, yes, continuing globalization, absolutely. But people want local. In fact, part of the whole debate around Brexit is exactly that. And there's people searching for identity in an increasingly global world. And so as a marketer, what we need to do is recognize that. So we need to find global scale, come up with big ideas that we can move around the world, but then accept they're going to be executed and activated with local magic.
So I think, just Mark, to the response.
Mark, do you want to get out of the way? We'll just have a chat.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just, call me back when you need me.
But just to comment, so what do we do? And we are sort of changing the horizontality thing we've been doing for 10 years. I believe it is a gradual process, but the ultimate destination is a unibranded company. We can, the people who run our brands, let's not call them silos. And, it's very difficult for WPP because if you think about, we've been going at this for 31 years, but effectively, if I look at the bigger parts of the company, they were all mini WPPs, whether it was JWT Group in 1987, Ogilvy in 89, Y&R in 2000, Gray in 2005. They were all actually listed companies in New York, and they were all companies that were trying to pursue their mini I hate the word conglomerate, but let's call it conglomerate approach. The issue for us is how, and what are the, or reverse coming back for a minute, what are the great professional service companies? And let me give you two. My view is that McKinsey and Goldman, you may disagree, are the two great uni-branded companies. Interesting, when they made acquisitions, they haven't been terribly successful in doing it because their cultures are so strong and they're like amoeba that reject foreign bodies. So when I think about it, it's a long-term destination. You can't do it quickly. It's got to be done gradually. And if I look at the attitudes of the people who run our brands today as opposed to 5 or 10 years ago, it's very different. And it's naturally going to be very different because the earlier leaders were running those verticals as separately listed companies trying to compete with us, actually. So you've got to think about it in that sense too. But ultimately, and I think what I referred to, the slow growth, low inflation, focus on cost, is going to drive more consolidation in our industry, just like it is in packaged goods, right? Just like it is doing in media, just like it is doing in our industry. It's inevitable. Some people may say sadly, but I think it's interesting that it will happen. It's inevitable to happen, but what we have to be is totally uni-branded. So when Unilever is our second largest client, what we have to do is to do everything we can possibly do for Unilever in the areas that they want in a totally unified way. Totally unified way.
So that goes to capability on your side too. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to show a slide a little later from Agency 2020 that talked about the capability building training efforts within organizations. And agencies are very, very lacking compared to clients. Keith, I know this is more than a hobby horse. It's a personal passion of yours. Building capability in a connected world. We talked about the explosion of touch points. Can you give us, just as a last point, can you give us a little bit of a sort of an oversight of how you've run that journey and how, if you have those big ideas that scale, but things are more and more local, how do you equip marketers for success now?
Well, I think capability building is a curious thing in businesses. No one has any sort of concern or challenge with how to be a good sportsman. How are you going to be a good sportsman? You know, you train, you have coaches. There's no football team that sit on a sofa and eat potato chips all week and get up on a Saturday morning and give it their best. But somehow, in business, going to training, doing capability building is like sort of, that's for the weak, isn't it? I don't know. You know, I do emails and I go to meetings and I have power networks. And it seems also true that at a certain seniority in a company, you know it all. I mean, you must do, because you're senior, aren't you? And you end up with this wonderful hippo syndrome, which is the highest paid person's opinion in the room. And you've all had the hippo syndrome. You know, the person who comes in who has the highest paid, he's the person who knows everything, or she's the person who knows everything. But I think what we've seen in this technology age is a flip. And I'm very much committed to capability building, because a lot of people who actually lead our biggest brands are what I call the lost generation. So there's a generation that's coming up who are obviously digital natives, and you know it all well. Then there are people like myself in my 50s, and I have a 21-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 25-year-old. If I wasn't on Snapchat, I'd have no relationship with my 21-year-old daughter, etc. So we also have direct connect. But we've got lots of people whose kids aren't old enough yet to drag them in, who weren't digital natives, who are really struggling. Yeah. And they are bluffing, I believe, too much about what they read in The Economist or whatever, about what's going on. So what I've done is, I've lost all democracy on this one. I have now forced training through Unilever, where, yes, we have collective workshops, but through e-modules, and we can monitor, of course, exactly who has done what modules, we've made it compulsory for all marketers to do e-modules around not digital marketing, but marketing in a digital world. Yeah. And that's at every level. And so, including the execs, my colleagues have had to do them as well. And when I explained to Paul that the execs had to do 4 modules by the end of last Friday, so they're coming in 3 stages, etc., right down to 13 modules if you're a brand manager, Paul said, I'll do them as well. So Paul's done them. So when we got towards the final days, and we still only had 85% completion, I can't understand which part of this is mandatory they didn't understand. But I sent out saying, hold on, guys, you know, if you don't want to do this, it's absolutely fine. But you've got to understand that this is the future. So you've got to where you are right now, and you're successful, and well done. Leave marketing now. You've got away with it. You haven't been caught out. But if you want to stay in marketing, you need to equip yourself. You can't keep chopping down wood without stopping to sharpen the axe. Sharpen the axe. Equip yourself. And if the CEO can find time to do his modules, you can find time as well. And I think that's something all of us need to do. Is we need to really engage in building our personal capabilities. Be selfish, because if you don't build your capabilities, how are you going to lead in this fast-changing world?
Keith, Sir Martin, thank you very much.